And y'all don't know what I went through.
Do you have a card in your hands right now?
Nike Talk was that place that spiraled what you enjoy now.
Anyone who brought a Kobe shoe in, I would clean it for free.
Man, Melo was better than a lot of people in the league.
I saw that. My favorite jersey is that one, the Barkley.
Kobe fours.
Oh, yeah.
Episode 56. This is the Dandid and RG Machismo podcast. This is Dandid. RG Machismo can't make it today, but he did said hello to everyone. So today we have Chase Hughes of NBC Sports Washington, who covers the NBA. He is the Washington Wizards inside reporter. Thank you so much, Chase, for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I believe this is my second appearance on the podcast. So
absolutely, yeah.
We had happy to be back on.
Yeah, we had you during the pandemic where it was kind of weird, but I'm glad we were able to have you on again. And yeah, I mean, we've been big fans of your work and your coverage.
Appreciate it.
So yeah, keep up the great work. So so right off the bat, I know the NBA first half just ended on Wednesday. So just want to just ask, what was your instant reaction to that 20-point deficit win against the Minnesota Timberwolves on Wednesday?
Well, first of all, I didn't think they were going to come back with the way things looked like in the first quarter, going down 20 points to the Timberwolves. I thought maybe it was the reverse of what happened when the Timberwolves were in DC, where Kristaps Porzingis got hot and the Wizards never really looked back in a blowout win. It was also kind of the reverse of what we've seen from the Wizards recently. They've lost a few games here and there where they were up big and then coughed up that lead and ended up losing. But I think it was a reminder that, for the most part, even when the Wizards have been down this year, even like during their 10-game losing streak, they very rarely get blown out. They're generally pretty competitive from night to night, as streaky as they've been, because when they lose, they generally go on a little bit of a losing streak. They don't really give up within games. I guess credit to Wes Unseld Jr. for that, but also credit to the players on this particular night. With the All-Star break ahead of them, a lot of those guys had trips planned to nice sunny places, and they were able to find enough energy to get back in the game and end up winning.
So, do you think the key to their key win was it the 9-man, the 9 roster rotation that they had? Because I saw that everyone was pretty much. I actually like that the biggest difference with that win, in my opinion, and I think he pointed out as well, was the second half adjustments that Wes Unseld Jr. had, especially when he had DeLon Wright on Anthony and Edwards, and that kind of pretty much solidified that run. Especially Gobert was just getting his. I think that was the plan, and then just let everyone just try to beat you. So what did you think about that, their current or that second half adjustment that they did?
Well, DeLon Wright's been really valuable for them on the defensive end this year. He had a terrific game, scored 10 points, but did so many other things, like 6 rebounds. I think he had 3 steals. Mm-hmm. He also had a block. So he had a terrific game. He had 4 offensive rebounds, including in the fourth quarter. There was a play where he had 2 offensive rebounds on the same play, and it led to a 3-pointer by Bradley Beal in the corner. But I think a big reason for that win was just they had better ball movement after the first quarter. The first quarter, there was a lot of isolation, a lot of bad shots, and they were able to break out of that and start moving the ball around, make the extra pass. And they ended up making 14 threes and shooting 40% from 3. And that was continuing a trend where they've been much better at 3-point shooting in recent months. Over the last month, they're top 10 in the league in 3-pointers made, and going back 3 months all the way to November, they're top 10 in 3-point percentage. And I think this was an example of, if your threes are falling, if you move the ball and you can make your threes, you can pretty much erase any deficit within reason. Obviously, if you go down by 40 points, that's going to be tough to come back from. But these big comebacks that you see in the NBA so often nowadays, including when the Wizards have been on the wrong side of them, it's generally because the other team can find a way to get hot from 3. And the Wizards were able to do that against the Timberwolves.
Yeah, exactly. And then I read a stat that Minnesota was also like within the bottom half of the league in defensive 3-point ranking. So I mean that also played a part too. And then I also wanted to add, what do you think about Bradley Beal's recent play? I know a lot of people, including myself, have been hankering, saying that, hey, he's not worth the money. And now these past few, he had these string of games since hopefully he's fully healthy now that, he's actually playing at an all-star level. So what do you think about his recent play for Bradley Beal?
He's played really well. I mean, he had 17 points in the fourth quarter against the Timberwolves. He basically took over the game, and that was the most points he's had in a fourth quarter in over 2 years. Back to when he was an All-NBA player next to Russell Westbrook with the Wizards, and so he's scoring. His scoring volume has gone up in recent games. I think it's 4 out of the last 5 that he scored over 30 points. But overall for the season, he's been good when he's been healthy. He's shot a good percentage, a career high from the field, also his highest 3-point percentage in 5 years. Even though he's not scoring 30 points a game, he's still scoring about 22 points a game, but more efficiently. And he's been pretty decent on the defensive end, I think, all things considered. Obviously, he's had some trouble this year late in games with turnovers, and turnovers have been an issue for him for the most part this year. But lately, we've seen that production translate into wins. Early in the season, Bradley Beal was putting up similar numbers, but the Wizards weren't winning a lot of those games. But if you go back 17 games with him, they're 13-4 in their last 17 games with Bradley Beal. So this is kind of like how they wanted it to work when they designed this roster in the offseason, where you have a nice scoring balance, and some nights it's going to be Porzingis, some nights it's going to be Kuzma, some nights it's going to be Bradley Beal, but basically where they don't have to ask Bradley Beal to score 30 points for them to win, and where they don't have to ask a lot from him on the defensive end, where they build a defensive structure around him with rim protection behind him and pretty decent defense around him at the 1 and the 3. And it's just hasn't all that often worked exactly as planned, but over the last month or so, it kind of has. So as long as he stays healthy and the rest of the roster stays healthy, you can see how it can work. And if you go back 27 games, which is as close as you can get to a third of the NBA season, they're 17-10. And a lot of that has been with Bradley Beal in the lineup. And obviously they got healthier. They got DeLon Wright back. They've gotten Kuzma back recently. Guys have been in and out of the rotation, but right now they're fully healthy. And that's a pretty good team. 17-10 would get you 52 wins at that pace over the course of an 82-game regular season. So right now the formula is working with Bradley Beal as one of their top scorers, and in this particular game is the guy who took over in the fourth.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I really hope that he continues that, that 2020 version of Bradley Beal where he made it all NBA, but considering he doesn't have to do the bulk of the responsibilities, especially he has Kristaps Porzingis and Kyle Kuzma shouldering that load. So, and they've only been playing 12 games together, right? Is that right, Chase? Like around that.
Beal, Porzingis, and Kuzma.
Kuzma, Beal, and Porzingis. How many games have they played together so far this season?
I believe now it's 27.
Oh, 27 games. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah. So I think hopefully they continue that pace. So So nice segue with that one. With the Wizards currently in 9th place in the Eastern Conference. So what's your expectation, Chase, for the second half of the season?
I think they make the playoffs via the play-in tournament. So I think it could be similar to what we saw a couple years ago when Russell Westbrook was here and Bradley Beal made All-NBA, where maybe they're the 8th seed and they have to get through the play-in tournament, but they earn a first-round playoff series. After that, obviously it depends on the matchup, and there's some really good teams at the top of the conference, but I feel good about their chances to get a top 8 seed. Right now they're 9th. They're only a half game out from 8th. A spot that's owned by the Atlanta Hawks. They got the Hawks a bunch of times in their final 28 games of the season, I believe, are remaining.
Right.
Let's see, they've played 26 games, I believe, are left. And I think they play the Hawks 4 times. So they've got them twice right after they get out of the All-Star break. So they're going to have a chance to play head-to-head against the Atlanta Hawks. But they just have much more positive momentum right now than the Hawks do. And if you look at the Wizards' schedule, it's pretty manageable moving forward. They also have the most home games remaining of any team in the league, and they have a winning record at home. So I think the schedule is going to do them some favors, and we've seen how good they are when they're healthy. They're not the Boston Celtics this year, but they're much better than their record would suggest when they're healthy. And right now they're healthy. So barring something unforeseen, I think the momentum that they have carried into the All-Star break will continue, and they'll be able to earn a playoff spot.
Yeah, most definitely, especially with Brooklyn having that nice pad lead before they made those 2 trades for, Kevin Durant and Kyrie. So as expected, we see, hopefully a drop off with that, and then they can maybe, switch spots with the Wizards. So yeah, I mean, it's a pretty, it's going to be a pretty fun stretch compared to what it was last season. And, I really hope that they continue their, their chemistry, and health is also going to be key as well. And also the adjustments by Wes Unseld. I know that he's been getting a lot of, criticism from, us fans, and other, observations from other, reporters that, hey, like, it's kind of like he's very stubborn, is what I would probably say, and things don't work the way the way it is. So hopefully, he can learn from, especially this last game with Minnesota, where he made a lot of good adjustments, especially at DeLon Wright towards like the second half. And yeah, I really hope that those things fall into play.
Well, Wes Unseld Jr. is a smart guy. He's got a good set of experience, and he's a good communicator, and I think, relates pretty well to the players. He's just still relatively inexperienced. So
Okay.
I think that was always going to be part of the equation when the Wizards hired him as a first-time head coach, is that, it's very rarely do you hire a guy who's never done it before is immediately going to know exactly what to do. So we saw some of the learning curve last year. I think some of it's carried over to this year, but I think if you look at his tenure in total, you could see him getting better. And I think the Wizards this year, there's definitely some times where it's like, okay, well, maybe you would want a coach to make up the difference, maybe when they had injuries to kind of compensate for the loss of other players. But I think there's also a lot of positives from this year that he could point to, like the development of some of the players, the fact that Porzingis and Kuzma are both having career years, and have formed a really nice balance in terms of shot attempts with Bradley Beal, which I think is a little bit easier said than done. And the defense has taken a step forward. It didn't look like it at times this year, certainly during the 10-game losing streak, but and it didn't happen overnight last year. Obviously, they were great to start the season and then ended up having a below average defense, but now they're right about the middle of the league. So it's like, it's not a huge step forward, but it is a step forward, and you can see the trajectory is there for him and for what the Wizards hired him to do. But we'll see moving forward. He's not a perfect head coach. I think if injuries do crop up, that'll be another challenge for him, because that to me is always a separator for head coaches. It's like, okay, when everyone's available and things are going well, that's one thing. Well, what happens when you're missing a few key players and you've got to, devise a way to make it so that your team doesn't skip a beat? That'll be something that he's got to figure out, obviously, moving forward. But all in all, I think he's improved from last year. And I think Wizards fans mostly would agree with that.
Yeah, I agree. I guess for us, we're so impatient, right? And
yeah,
in this DC sports, all facets, football, hockey, basketball, we're so impatient that we just want to win. It's DC is very rich as far as like basketball culture from the very beginning. And I guess for us, like, we expect more from Wes Unseld, because I know his dad was a great NBA player for the Bullets, and he was a okay coach with the Bullets as well. So I hope and he's a very he's a very likable coach as well. Very insightful with his post game interviews, and yeah, I just hope wish nothing but the best, and it definitely an upgrade from what we had in previous coaches. So yeah. So next question for you, Chase. So in your opinion, which player or players have elevated their game this season, and which have underperformed in your opinion?
I think Kyle Kuzma has elevated his game, although we saw toward the end of last season that maybe that was a sign of more to come. But he's scoring a career high in terms of points. His percentages have fluctuated a little bit, but I think he's clearly better than he was a year ago. Porzingis is just about him staying healthy. He's kind of been a very similar player to what we've seen in recent years when he's been healthy, and now he's healthy, and now he's putting up career numbers as well. As far as who else has gotten better year over year, I think Kispert is better. His shooting percentages certainly reflect that. He's, I think, gotten to a really good place in terms of his efficiency. The challenge will be, can they scale the volume up a little bit, as he moves forward throughout his career, but certainly a step forward for him. Denny Avdia, I think has gotten better. He's still obviously searching for consistency, but I think the offense has improved a little bit for him this year. Maybe the numbers don't reflect it in a dramatic way, but I just can tell that he's added more to his game. That's Daniel Gafford, I think, is in a better, he's more consistent than he was a year ago because he's in a better role for himself. Let's see who else. Obviously, there were a lot of additions who weren't on the roster last year. So that might pretty much cover it. In terms of who I've been disappointed with, obviously the Will Barton experiment hasn't worked out, and it doesn't look like it will continue if the Wizards move forward with the buyout that they've been working on. And that was a little bit of a surprise to me. I thought, him coming over, he was going to find a pretty good role for himself and that Wes Unseld Jr. would know exactly how to utilize him, but it just didn't work out. And I think it was in part because he's not getting to the rim as nearly as often as he did during his best years in Denver. Also, he just wasn't making the same shots that he was making in previous years. Just one of those years it's a make or miss league, and he's been missing shots, and he rated pretty poorly defensively. But also, there was a pretty big adjustment for, I think, both him and Monte Morris coming over, having played with Nikola Jokic, where the offense ran through him, and he's unbelievable at drawing the attention of the defense and then throwing perfect passes to his teammates. So I think naturally those guys were going to benefit from that. And Monte Morris has done a better job of adjusting to new surroundings. He said he had to relearn the point guard position. So it wasn't easy, but I think you've seen his numbers start to catch up lately. And maybe he was afforded the opportunity of a more consistent role than Will Barton was given. Because Monte Morris was brought in to be the starting point guard, and then DeLon Wright got hurt. So it's like, even when he was struggling, they couldn't really go in a different direction. But he's really pulled out of it. Will Barton wasn't able to, and it looks like, he'll get a fresh change of surroundings, and maybe he'll benefit from that.
Yeah. So in addition to that, I know we traded Rui Hachimura for a couple second round picks, and also for Chris Dunn. What's your impression of Chris Dunn so far this season, and then in a small sample size?
Kendrick Nunn, right?
Kendrick Nunn, yeah.
He's been pretty good, I would say. First impression of him is that he's not afraid to take his shot. Some players on the roster, Rui Hachimura, I guess, included, have fluctuated with their aggressiveness and their assertiveness. Certainly Denny Avdia, you could put in that category. A lot of the young players do, but he's someone who's very aggressive and looks for his own shot. So there's that. And I think, when you start to look at the numbers that he's put up here, they've been pretty decent. It's not what he was 2 years ago in Miami, but you can go back a couple weeks to before he got traded by the Lakers, where it was pretty clear they started maybe to showcase him ahead of the trade deadline to try to see if another team would bite. And they were able to play him more, and he started scoring a little bit more. And I think he also caught a bit of a shooting rhythm. A couple of years ago in Miami, he shot like 38% from three and on like 5.5 attempts per game. So he was a pretty decent shooter in terms of volume and efficiency, but then he missed a full season. So he naturally was going to take some time to readjust. And I think it's possible that he caught a bit of a rhythm a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago. And it's possible that there's some upside that he can tap into down the stretch of the season and maybe help the Wizards with their 3-point shooting, maybe a little bit more than the overall season numbers would suggest.
Yeah. I remember him watching him in the bubble when he was with Miami. It's particularly in the playoffs too. I think one of the games, I think they played Boston, and he scored maybe 18, 20 points off the bench in garbage time. That, to me, that's impressive, even though that was already, maybe, I don't know, I can't remember which game it was, but he can score in bunches, and that's something the Wizards can hopefully use, and hopefully Wes Unseld can find him more minutes within the rotation. I know that right now he's playing a pretty tight rotation right now. I think like 9 or 10 players. So hopefully, he gets that going. And I also wanted to ask you about, because I know you also cover about the Go-Go. Any updates on Johnny Davis and his development?
Not really at the moment. He has spent a lot of time down there, of course. And from what I gather, he's been a pretty impactful player defensively for the Go-Go this year, but obviously his offense still has some work to do before he can get back to the NBA and make a difference and make an impact in the Wizards rotation. He's been with the Wizards in recent games, but hasn't been playing very much. Although he did get into a game recently, I think it was against the Blazers, and made a 3. So there's that. But yeah, he's gotta improve his jump shot and improve his ability to protect the ball, I think, before the Wizards are going to give him some real minutes at the NBA level. But defensively, I think he's been pretty good for the Go-Go this year, but it's tough when the Wizards rotation, although they've improved with 3-point shooting, it's not like they're one of the best shooting teams in the league. So if you're a guy who has a little bit of trouble making your 3-point shot, then it's kind of tough to put you out there with lineups with other players who have trouble doing that. And also, going back to Kendrick Nunn, I think that definitely had a direct effect on Johnny Davis's ability to get minutes the rest of the season, because Kendrick Nunn, like Johnny Davis, is a bit of a combo guard, but just a more experienced one.
Yeah, I agree. And hopefully, Johnny Davis, hopefully within in the summer league, which that will be hopefully it'll be a big step for him. Because I know we saw a little bit of flashes, and as expected, rookies do rookie things, and hopefully he can just take that big step forward, and hopefully he can also contribute within that roster. So I mean, he's very talented in Wisconsin, and I know that people had their opinions about us drafting him with the 10th pick, but I do see a lot of things that may be very helpful for the Wizards in as he continues to develop. So I just hope he continues to get towards the right path. So
yeah, I mean, I think the Wizards have to just have some confidence in the way things went for him at Wisconsin, where his first year he only averaged about 7 points a game and wasn't a huge factor. And then the second year he was the Big Ten Player of the Year and became a top 10 pick. So if he can have that same trajectory where he sort of laid a foundation and then made a huge leap year over year, then he'll be just fine.
Awesome. All right, so nice segue from the current roster to the previous roster of the Wizards a year. So I know they're celebrating, they just recently had a big celebration, and I know one of the highlights of the Wizards season has been that the celebration of the original Big Three, which was Gilbert Arenas, Caron Butler, and Anton Jameson. And also, you were also you were at the press conference that they had before the game. So what was that like, seeing those three together, and for Gilbert Arenas being back in DC? So what were your observations with that, Chase?
It was cooler than I expected it to be. Part of the reason why I got into this business because I was a huge Wizards fan growing up, and particularly of that team. I was like in high school and college when Gilbert Arenas was doing his thing, and I was around the team a little bit as an intern back in 2009, 2010, which was the season where everything really unraveled, and after that they got John Wall in the draft. So a lot of time had passed, and it just brought back a lot of old memories seeing those three together. And I've gotten to know Caron Butler a little bit, being in the media industry. I actually did TV with him sometimes, and that was really cool because he was my favorite player on that team. And I've gotten to know Anton Jameson better than any of them because he's around. He works for the Wizards. He's also done some TV with us at NBC Sports Washington. But I had never met Gilbert Arenas before, so it was my first time introducing myself to him and being able to ask him questions, and that was just really cool. It kind of took me back to growing up in the area and being a fan of the team. So obviously I think it was a really cool moment for the franchise and also for those guys to get back together. And I would imagine there were a lot of Wizards fans out there who felt some nostalgia watching those guys get back together because, it's not like they, of course, won a championship or anything like that, but they gave Wizards fans some of their best memories for across generations, honestly, for the franchise, because they didn't go on a deep playoff run, but they were an especially fun team, and I think they brought a lot of people into the fan base because Gilbert Arenas really transcended the area. He was one of the best players in the league and one of the most exciting scorers and personalities in the league. So I certainly have very fond memories of that era.
Yeah. I mean, we all did. Like, he had so many game winners, so many playoff moments, and for those 8 years that he had, those were fun years, and abruptly. Unfortunately, it abruptly ended the way it did. But I'm glad that the Wizards organization gave him his flowers, and hopefully down the road, they can retire his number 0 number, as well as Jameson. And I know Beal has Karan's number, and that's probably going to be next when Beal's done and over with. So hopefully that's going to be the next step, Chase, is for them to retire those 2 numbers. What do you think about that possibility?
I think Gilbert Arenas at some point, I would imagine, gets his number retired. He was such a transcendent player, and no one has worn the number since, right? And I remember
no, I don't think so.
Yeah, I remember a couple players have come in who've been asked about it, and some of them have said that they essentially, it wasn't available. And then other players said that it kind of was available, but it was like Russell Westbrook. And
yeah, I remember that one.
Kyle Kuzma kind of indicated that he could have had it if he wanted to, but certainly Westbrook could have had it. And he said, he didn't want to out of respect for Gilbert Arenas. And Kyle Kuzma said the same thing. But bottom line is no one's worn it. It's also like, no one's worn 23 since Michael Jordan was here. So those numbers seem to be like unofficially retired, even though they don't hang in the rafters. But in the case of Gilbert Arenas, that would be my guess, that it's someday there's maybe this was a step towards that, where maybe, I don't know if it's in the distant future or sometime soon, they bring him back and raise his number, and that'll be another special moment.
Yeah, and I'll definitely be there in attendance when that happens, and I'm sure you'll be there as well. And hopefully there'll be another call.
Lord willing,
yeah, hopefully. So yeah, thank you so much, Chase, for coming on. And then I just wanted to know, what's your NBA Finals prediction? I know there's so many teams are in the uprise, so many teams that's going, transcending, descending. So in your opinion, who do you see the 2 teams in June?
I'll go with the Boston Celtics over the Memphis Grizzlies. And I think that'd be a fantastic finals to have Jason Tatum and John Morant, 2 of the league's brightest young stars, go at it. And the reason why I'm picking those teams is because of their defense, and they've got the scorers that I think can take over playoff series. So Celtics came up just short last year, but I think they're even better than they were last year, especially with Brogdon and Robert Williams healthy, and Tatum and Brown are even better, I think, than they were last year. So I think it's the Celtics over the Grizzlies.
Okay, and
how about you?
How many? I would say, I would probably say I like Milwaukee, because I think that they're getting Chris Middleton back, but I also do like Boston too. So I think within the Eastern Conference Finals, I do see Milwaukee and Boston, but I do see Milwaukee edging them out in 7 games. I think Giannis will just have one of his like superhuman, extraordinary, 40-20 type of games. But I think it's gonna be between Denver and Memphis in the Western Conference. So I think I'm going to pick Milwaukee and Denver, and I got Denver winning it all, because I think they're very complete. And the trades that they did, recently, I know they got rid of Bones Highland to the Clippers, and I think they're just starting to gel now. They're a very well coached team, very balanced, and Jamal Murray is getting back to where he was before, and Jokic is just being Jokic, very quiet, MVP candidate, and they'll probably win it again this year. So I think I got Denver probably winning in 7 games over Milwaukee. So
I mean, that's I think you're right about those 4 teams deciding the championship this year, at least as of now.
Yeah, and it's gonna be a fun. I mean, people think Jokic is so boring to watch, but like I tell people he's like the modern like Tim Duncan, like, but it's more, has a much more like very skillful. Like we don't see Duncan passing the ball or shooting a 3, or no like behind the look passes. They're very fundamentally sound, but I think Jokic just has more of he's just more well-rounded as far as like a complete player for like playing at the 5. So
offensively,
I
think Duncan would be the better defender, but I could see some similarities for sure.
Exactly. So last question for you, Chase. And we talked, behind, behind it, about it. So you just recently tried Filipino food for the first time, and I mentioned to you, yeah, my cousin has a restaurant in Annandale. I wanted you to try it, and I know you were pretty busy, during the season, and messaged me, hey, like I'd like to try it sometime. So I know you and your family tried it out, the Sari Cocina in Annandale. So what was that first time experience for you, like trying Filipino food?
Oh, it was great, man. Yeah, it was Filipino barbecue, and I had long wanted to try Filipino food. This area is so incredible in terms of all the international food and how authentic it is. But one of the cuisines that I hadn't tried yet was Filipino food, and thanks to you and your cousin, I was able to, and it was awesome, man. I mean, I love barbecue in general, but it was such an interesting spin on barbecue and smoked meats, the sauces that came with the meat were just different flavors than what I'm used to. And I loved it. I'm definitely a fan, and definitely plan on trying Filipino food again.
Yeah, definitely. And hopefully, an NBA sport, and hopefully when the Wizards make it to the playoffs, you can tell people from the NBA Sports, maybe they can do a catering, a Wizards watch party with, with good food around, and you guys will, cover it that way. Hopefully that works out. But yeah, I will, we do. My cousin Jeremy wanted to say thank you for, reposting it on your, on your social media, and actually it got a lot of good positive feedback as well. And I think he's going to be opening more restaurants in the DMV area. So
Oh, great.
more to come. And I know like Chris Miller, Drew Gooden, and then they're pretty big foodies, talking about food all the time, and hopefully that they can try it out as well.
Yeah, man, I'll link you guys up.
For sure. All right, Chase. So thank you so much for your time. And who do you think is gonna win between Team LeBron and Team Giannis? I know it's like a new format. It's kind of like old school, I guess. Like playground basketball. We don't know who the roster is gonna be, but who do you think will construct the better team between the two?
I'll go with Team Giannis. Yeah, we don't know the rosters yet, but I feel like Giannis is having such a big year. LeBron's been banged up a little bit, so I feel like Giannis is going to put on a show.
For sure, for sure. All right, Chase. So thank you so much for having the time today. And then where can they find you on your social media?
At Chase Hughes NBCS on Twitter.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Chase. Yeah, this is episode 56. Thank you so much.
Thank you.